Hi, this is Adam Sutton from Sutton Business Velocity. I'd like to point to my website, suttonbusinessvelocity.com, where you can learn more about the services my firm offers in support of your total reward strategy. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Cast Iron Daddy for all the amazing work and support they've been giving in partnership with Sutton Business Velocity to establish what you're seeing here, and more to come. I think the website is looking great, and there's some updates that are coming along as well, which will release soon, and some other fun things. So thank you, Cast Iron Daddy, for all the continued partnership and support you're giving to Sutton Business Velocity. I'd like to also point you to my YouTube channel, which I've left the description up for you. Total Rewards Expert Adam Sutton. I've posted on there series one and two. This is now series three. You should have now hopefully been following along with series three, but if not, jump into the first part of series three that talks about series one and two and a little about how we established a total rewards persona in ChatGPT, ran a few tests and got it to seriously embarrass me with its scoring. We'll just move on from that. Again, it's all for science. I'm wearing a hardened shell as I'm going along in this journey with you. But please make sure to read the description in the YouTube channel. It gives you a great sense of where I'm going with this, and hopefully you'll appreciate the kind of work that I'm doing here, and you'll want to follow along. So, where we left off, we were with Claude. So I'm going to bring Claude back up over here, and where is it on my screen? I see it up there. Okay, great. So basically, Claude essentially went through a approach to how it thought it could solve this problem of a we'll call it a technology firm that is trying to better understand how to deal with resigning employee, a recently resigned employee, and the CEO, CTO are very heavily involved in making sure that we do not continue to lose more employees. So there's a lot going on here. And essentially, at the end of the day, Claude's AI, we'll call it a model of a total rewards expert, suggested that we immediately spend money. That's not what Sutton Business Velocity will propose when we sit down and have any conversations. It'll never start with, "Hey, we need to spend more money." No, that's probably the last thing we want to do. But in all fairness, we allowed the model to come forward and give us a recommendation. And that's what we were trying to get here is what is the recommendation? I've provided some commentary on what that recommendation was. You can see over here, this is a little further down the risk mitigation strategies. There's a communications component. Other areas are going to complain. There's a budget reality. There's the IPO optics, which again, I think IPO optics might be a little overstated. A company is permitted to operate the way it needs to operate as long as you're disclosing to the companies that and the financiers that are working with your company, as long as you're disclosing with them what you're doing. Now, they may not like it, and they may want to see more discipline and more rigor to making sure that these things don't happen. But when you're doing things to operate in the best interest of the company, you probably do want to do those things, and then just make sure you're disclosing to them, listen, we had to do this. This was the circumstance. This is what it's going to create. Now, again, there is a period of time that is explicitly laid out where you are not allowed to touch anything, and that's okay. So don't go and touch anything within that period of time, and threats and people leaving the company be damned. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. So here we are. We're just in a sense making sure that underwriters will understand what we're trying to do here. I don't find that to be, it's a risk, but I don't find that to be really too much of an issue as long as it's sensible. So they're giving their explanation. Why are they doing this? Speed versus precision balance. I'm not giving them today because that's a recipe for disaster, but I am giving them 60 days with immediate bridge tactics. In 25 years, I've learned that fast decisions made under executive pressure create 18-month cleanup projects. That's a great paragraph. If I could agree 100%, I would do it. And here it is 100%. I agree. You definitely don't want to pull triggers on things before exercising discipline. discipline. And sometimes I think, I don't remember where I heard it, but there was somebody once said to me that when you're faced with a really difficult decision and it's happening kind of quickly all around you, the best thing to do is to grab a cup of coffee and have a sip. And that tends to slow the world down for you. I actually agree with that. You know, at the end of the day, a cup of coffee takes 5 minutes, and let it cool for a minute, and then you grab that first sip. That's enough time to assess and understand what's going on in terms of things like a cascading effect, the scrutiny around the IPO, any inflation continuation that's going to be happening, the retention of the wrong people potentially. So that is the right perspective to take. Deep breath. Let's figure out what's going on here. Now, do I agree with their approach? I'm not in 100% agreement with what they're recommending here. They have a 75% confidence level. The concern is whether the CEO today is truly just urgency, or whether there's a board meeting and investor presentation driving some artificial deadline that you're unaware of, which happens a lot. I will tell you from personal experience, and I'm not going to disclose where or to what extent, but yeah, there are lots of instances where you are a very senior level person with a very senior level responsibility, and you are not aware of things that are going on around you because you're just not supposed to be aware of those things. And later on, you kind of find out that everything you were trying to do was in vain because some other larger decision has been made around you that you're unaware of. I'm also making assumptions about our equity position as a pre. Okay, so it's getting into a lot of that stuff. So now it wants to hear a little bit about where um, where it's what is my recommendation around it. Now, I didn't want to waste your time with writing the whole thing, so I actually pre-wrote my feedback recommendations around it, and I'm going to paste them in here, and we can read them together. Okay, so this is what Sutton Business Velocity would really ultimately think is the best course of action to take in this kind of a situation. And I would love to get your perspective on it. You're reading it right now, hopefully. And I would love to get your perspective on it. And we're going to hear what the AI persona thinks of it in the very next part. I'm sorry that I'm going to do that to you, but I'm not going to click the button. I'm going to read this to you, and I want you to understand what's going on. And I'd like for you to make your own decisions as to whether or not I've established the right process to deal with a situation like this. It's important for us to establish a baseline of expertise. We are a community of experts. We are the people that live in not only the third dimension, but we have that fourth dimension of that inner understanding of what's to come and how things are going to happen, and are a read of the environment around us. And the intent around this test, around this experiment, is to get a sense of whether or not your read, your expertise around this is a better judgment than what it is that the AI said. Immediately spend money. I think it was $1 million on average they were looking to spend. And they never even mentioned the individual employees on there. They never mentioned that there was some sort of competency assessment. Nothing of that was done. So here's my recommendation, and here Sutton Business Velocity is a partner in this process. It is not a dictatorial organization. Partner number one, partner with the HR business partners and the manager of the division. Again, I'm being vague. To conduct a job competency alignment review to assess relationship of current development ops jobs to the established job structure. We want to understand whether or not we are correctly understanding what it is that these jobs are actually doing relative to the structure that we've established, so that we can create a new baseline if we have to. But we just need to understand where we are. Collect hire and turnover data related to the division from the past 6 months. We want to understand, is this an isolated problem, or is this a problem where, hey, you know what? if we don't go over the edge on this and spend so much money to retain this one and maybe this other employee that left us before, so what? We've been able to hire people. We're not really having a tough time with it. We're getting great talent in, and the talent tends to perform well for us. Turnover data, again, it's important. How many people leave? How often are they leaving? Those are really quick pieces of data that can be turned over within a few days. Again, I'm making the assumption that those pieces of data are, if they're not available, they're not available. That's extra, but we'll go through that in a minute. Number three, contact your survey vendors. You almost certainly have a relationship or some survey vendor that's providing you with data because you have market reference ranges. So go to that survey vendor, but not via email. Call them. Establish a new baseline for market compensation for DevOps and related roles. Develop an alternative market reference range for DevOps to model potential compensation recommendations based on both the current and adjusted market reference. So what you're doing is contacting your vendor and saying, hey, have you heard in DevOps there's some sort of like hot job going on there, and is it like 10% or 15%? Is it in this market versus that market, or in this industry versus that industry? Get a little information. They tend to be very nice. You usually have to establish these kinds of relationships. And if you haven't, do it, because this is what it's for. But once you establish a little bit of information, maybe there's a plus up of 10%. Okay, fine. Develop this alternative market range, establish it under the context of this plus up through conversation with your vendor, and then you have the current and the model. So you never really have to rely on what the model is. You can always use the current. Plot a four square heat map that identifies where employees are relative to the x-axis competency achievement within the level's established structure. What is the x-axis of competency achievement? I don't know. You have to make that up yourself. That's what a total rewards team will do in terms of understanding talent development, talent and organizational development, and competency review underneath the job architecture. But for you, it's to partner with the HR team to say, listen, you have to help me understand what is a high competency job looking like at this level, and what is a low competency job looking like at this level. And if you can establish what that is, and then plot everybody in there within it on a relative basis, who is high competency, who's low competency, just give us a general sense. Then where do these two people, in a sense, that left before, the one that's threatening, and let us know where they sit within that competency hierarchy, and then within our established pay range. And we could do it both on the modeled and on the current pay range, so that we can see where people sit in this four box. The four box is going to tell us who is low in the compensation range and high in the competency area. Those are the targeted people. Those are the people we really don't want to lose. Then we could bring, let's see, model, I'm looking at number 5, model bringing identified employees' pay into the upper third of the, so that's taking those people we found in the heat map, model bringing all of them up into the upper third. That's typically where fully competent employees should be paid, the upper third of the range, upper 25%, whatever that makes sense in your company, but it's typically that upper portion of the range. Then you want to make a proposal. Propose a long term incentive plan that connects employees with high competency and high performance with long term financial rewards remaining with the company. So you're saying to them, look, there are people that are high performers and high competency that we could end up sticking with a long term incentive plan, and that'll help us to retain them over a period of time, because those high competency people are the people who will probably be promoted and then start to mentor others along the way. Evaluate the ripple effects on organizational integrity and alignment. Always understand what's going on around you. If you do not understand the ripple effect, you are absolutely going to miss the boat. Create a report outlining inputs, heat map, identified at risk employees based on their placement in the heat map, higher turnover assessment, and evaluation. So this pulls it all together. So create a report that doesn't just throw data and different spreadsheets together, but it creates a report that says, this is what we looked at. This is the areas that we identified based on an assessment of competency relative to position in range. We then took a look at those at-risk employees and modeled an increase to to 30% of the maximum of the range. We then did a pulled hire and turnover assessment to see whether or not there's really a need to plus up this model or not. And that helped us to do this a little bit more with our relationship with the survey vendor. We then looked at the current employees and we were looking to see where they sit within the heat map. If they sit within the heat map and should be recommended for an increase, I probably would do that. If they're not, if their competencies are low and their pay is low and they're looking to leave the company, this may not be a bad thing. It really may not be a bad thing. We could potentially replace that with a higher competent employee at a similar comp rate and then evolve them through the range. And then, yes, put that long term incentive program out there as a recommendation and see what the CHRO and CFO think on this, along with the CEO. So I'm not going to click the button here. Okay. We've already done quite a bit in terms of recording. I think it just makes sense at this point to pause. We'll come back to this. We'll see what ChatGPT, or this is, I'm sorry, Claude, we'll see what Claude has to say. I'd really love to know how your assessment is relative to what my assessment is, and then how that it compares to what Claude is going to respond to. I think the next part of this is going to be a highly anticipated part. I think a lot of people are going to want to see what Claude has to say. So until next time, from Sutton Business Velocity, thank you for joining.